You won't believe the call that I got yesterday. It was a referral from a friend, and I get these, but I mean, this one really stood out. There was a young lady who was about to file for divorce. I mean, it was like last minute. She was ready to sign. In fact, when I first talked to her, she said she thought she'd already filed, but she also said she hadn't signed yet. So I was a little bit, what is going on here? And even more so, surprised that she really didn't know what's going on. I'm a divorce attorney. I sometimes get calls like these. They're not entirely shocking, but this one was spectacularly so because this lady was about to throw an A-bomb into the middle of a situation with a drug-addicted narcissist who was taking her kids out of state and had no plan of action beyond filing for divorce. Now, look, in Colorado, when you file for divorce, an automatic temporary injunction goes into place. And so as long as this guy got served, then he wasn't going to be able to take the kids out. But my question was, okay, so what happens next? And crickets. So there was no plan. So you're going to be there with this guy who didn't get to do what he does, and he's a narcissist, and he's also an addict. And what do you think he's going to do? Crickets. That hadn't been thought through. And you know what? I don't fault her for having not thought it through, but I definitely fault her attorney. Yep, she was a referral from somebody else. Like I said, she was about to file. She was sent to me by my friends because when they found out what she was about to do, they said, listen, don't do anything until you talk to Angela and you get a real strategy in place. They know that, it's like the difference between going to H&R Block and dealing with a tax strategist. Big differences in your outcomes, So she came to me and I just started asking the normal questions that I always would ask. And these are questions that I'm going to share with you today, things that need to be thought through before you throw down the gauntlet. You don't want to enter into what I think, is really, it's a chess game, at the very least, maybe a chess tournament ultimately, and you be playing checkers. What that ends up doing is allows you to be driven. It puts you in a position to get your lunch eaten. Whereas if you put some forethought and planning into everything, and I'll tell you what everything is, you're going to be much better off. It's going to keep your costs down. It's going to optimize your chances of having a good outcome. And best of all, it's going to allow you to lead and always be responsive instead of reactive once the divorce is actually going. So the very first thing I do with folks is I sit down and we talk about their goals. We want to know, what is it you're trying to accomplish here? Not, hey, I just want to accomplish keeping my kids safe. But overall, if you've hit a point where you're ready to call a divorce attorney, it's usually because something's happened. I'm done. I'm out on this. And so that might be something that, you're hyper focused on. But there's a much bigger picture going on, especially if you have kids and you're moving forward with divorce. There's things like, what are you going to do financially moving forward? Where are you going to live? How is the visitation going to work? What money do you have access to? What money will you continue to have access to if you file for divorce and you don't put some in an account that your spouse can't shut you out of? Do you have the paperwork that you would need to be able to prove your case? Do you have documentation of these things that concern you? Like many times we have people coming in and say, look, their children need to be protected, but they don't have any real evidence of the need to protect their kids because these things go on in private. It's not like you're walking around filming your spouse when the arguments go on or when they're coming in drunk or, they're getting high and driving, especially if they haven't got stopped for a DUI. There's a lot to think about there. But the key is to think it through from soup to nuts. I very often, almost always, when people come to us and they're wanting to file divorce, I almost always suggest what I call pre-divorce planning. Even if that pre-divorce planning is compressed, it doesn't have to take weeks and months and years at all. Always, we want to go through every aspect of what you're going to have decided in your divorce. And sometimes in a certain amount of minutia, that needs to be gamed out. Before that, though, if you've got an abuse situation going on, if there's just something urgent that has to be dealt with, like what this gal was dealing with, you have to have a safety plan. And that safety plan includes finances. You need to have money set aside, some way that you're going to live while this divorce goes on, because it's very common, especially for people who are stay-at-home parents, who are financially dependent, to have that financial control exerted as retaliation for filing for divorce. For like, you stand up for yourself, so they're going to take, their ball and go home as a punishment, either to use for leverage or just because they're a nasty, nasty piece of work. They're not going to be thinking about your kids, so you need to be thinking about your kids on the front end. Kids are going to get caught in the crosshairs, so where the kids are going to stay, what they're going to be forced to have to field and interact with when all of this goes down needs to be thought through on the front end. I cannot tell you how many times by planning this, and we've planned down to the day that we're filing, these funds will be moved. The movers will show up once the spouse goes to work. The divorce paperwork is going to be filed at X time. They're going to be served at Y time. And it's laid out like a military operation, because it is. You are either going to be on the, driving end or on the receiving end. And when you're the one stepping into a lawyer's office, you get to decide which end that you're going to be on. The problem is you have to know this when you're picking a lawyer. Okay. Like this gal that went to an attorney with her specific problem. And I get it. You go to lawyers, they're going to give you the lawyer answer. Hey, I've got this problem. How can I legally solve it? Right. And I'm telling you, she wasn't given bad advice. She wasn't giving wrong advice on how to solve that specific problem. What happened, though, is she didn't follow through dealing with all the secondary and tertiary issues, which were automatically going to come. Like, for instance, if this gal had filed that automatic temporary injunction and not moved any money ahead of time, then she wasn't going to be able to move the money without being in violation of that injunction. Secondarily, she was going to trap herself in the state with the kids. Sure, he was trapped in the state with the kids, but so is she. And so when I asked her, where is she going to go live? Well, her only means of a backup plan, the only place she could go stay in the interim while divorce was pending, was out of the state. So it was really important for that order of operations to get the plan in place, to think through big picture wise what you're going to do. So she hired us on the spot, and, we just adjusted her plan. She left the consult, moved the money. Today we're going to file. She should be out of state already at that time. It was a minor adjustment that was facilitated by taking it out big picture. And that's what I'm going to leave to you. You want to go into your divorce thinking about the big picture. In fact, I suggest and provide the service to our clients that we come up with your settlement documents before you even file. What I want to do is I want to know everything that you want. We're going to talk through these things. I'm going to ask you where your bright red line is. I'm going to make sure that you've got reasonable expectations. And that way, when we're moving forward, very often we're able to file the petition along with the settlement documents and start negotiating right from the get-go. That's how we're able to get divorces done quickly. Now, it doesn't work in every case. If you're divorcing a narcissist, chances are they're not going to take anything that you have to offer. But it optimizes the fact that you're going to be in a position, operating from a position of strength. Your lawyer's fees are going to be kept down because you've already talked to your lawyer about what you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do. We've got all our bright red lines drawn. So I don't think there's any reason to argue, go back and forth, spin up fees and create drama. If we've already thought through, okay, here's our move, here's their likely next move, then that'll be our move, et cetera, et cetera. It's not a lot of conversation. There's not a lot of things to blow up, and you can rest more easy. It's never going to be easy. It's always going to be stressful. Even weddings, which are wonderful things, right, are stressful. Having new babies, buying new homes, these are all great. Divorce is a huge decision, so treat it that way and don't go into it off of a knee-jerk situation.